So my name is Karsten Januszewski from Microsoft. I have the kind of interesting title of Platform Technical Evangelist. And I'm not really that keen on the title, especially the evangelist part. I don't know what that connotes in your mind, but generally evangelism, you think of someone trying to sell you something or convert you to something, maybe a religion, maybe bring you to the dark side. In fact, you don't need to raise your hands, but perhaps in many of your minds, this is what you're thinking right now, and where I came from. It's actually not what it looks like where I work. I took a picture of my office before I left. So that's my office. No windows, at least physical ones. That's the hallway outside my office. And nice Redmond, Washington, outside of Seattle. So that's where I work. Came down here to this conference, but you still might be asking yourselves, what am I doing here? Why is a Microsoft technical evangelist at a design conference? And that's certainly a fair question. I mean, Microsoft hasn't done a lot for the design community lately. And this is about as sophisticated as it gets when it comes to design tools that we offer. This is my rendition here using the spray paint feature. It came in maybe Windows 98. We haven't really revved it since then. So, you certainly have reason to be skeptical. I would grant you that, no doubt. But I want to tell you why I am here today, actually, and why there's several Microsoft people kind of flowing around the conference. We're one of the general sponsors of the conference. And while I don't like the evangelist part of my title, I quite like the platform part, the platform technical evangelist. And I wanted to just spend a minute to talk about what it means to be a platform company, which is what Microsoft is. We spend a lot of time in our group talking about the platform, talking about the ecosystem, talking about the opportunities for others to build on top of us, for others to build software, to build training materials, to build tools. The health of the ecosystem is really important to us, and we feel like we're successful when people are successful on our platform. So, and I think over the years, while we have not served the design community particularly well, we have certainly written some pretty decent platforms. How many of you have heard of Win32? Raise your hands. Okay, this is the kind of granddaddy of Microsoft platforms. It's been around, since Windows 95. Most of the apps that you probably have used if you're a Windows user, I know not all of you are probably written on Win32, the Adobe products, Microsoft Office, you name it. Win32 is our kind of foundational platform. It's been around for a long time. People have done a lot of amazing things on it. How many have heard of COM? Okay, so a number of you. COM is sort of a wrapper on top of Win32 to make it more reusable, to create components that can be reused by applications. Also has a long legacy of people innovating. .NET, how many of you have heard of .NET? Okay, a lot of you. So .NET's a more recent thing, around circa 2000, 2001. It was somewhat of a rethinking of our platform, of the way that you write applications on Windows. And it did a lot of things that were more difficult in Win32. It dealt with things like memory management, and it's very strongly typed to prevent buffer overruns. And the API itself was refactored. If you haven't worked with Win32, developers just made up API names that had no consistency with any other APIs, and it was kind of hard to use Win32. .NET, really elegant, really well thought out. Multiple language support like C#, .NET, Visual C++, .NET. I want to switch to some other platforms Microsoft's done. The last two are more on the visual space. GDI, GDI+, who knows what that is, or who's heard of that? So yeah, a lot fewer of you, but GDI, if you are a Windows user, for the last 20 years, if you've been looking at pixels painted onto the screen, it was probably GDI, GDI+ that was doing it under the covers. That's the engine that renders rasterized bitmaps to a screen. 90% of what you see is done through this engine, this GDI engine. It's been around a long time, tried and true. Internet Explorer's engine is based on it, etc. Now, DirectX, another platform. Who's heard of that? Okay, maybe a few more. DirectX is not GDI. It's a different real deep-level engine for rendering pixels to a screen. If you've seen Xbox, Xbox is built on DirectX. If you've seen some of the games on PCs like Doom or Quake or all those tend to be DirectX games. It's a more recent technology and much more powerful technology that has a lot of horsepower behind it, but has a pretty high cost of entry to use it. And I just want to make this point again that as a platform company, people have innovated on Microsoft over the years. They've done amazing things. So I'm here to talk to you about a new platform that I think you'll find interesting as a design community. People who are interested in visuals and pushing the limits of UI and pushing the limits of what you can do on a PC. Microsoft has looked at the presentation platform we have and looked at what we have and what we want moving forward. And there's really kind of two vectors that are driving our thinking around what do you want for a presentation platform for the next 2, 5, 10 years. And those two vectors are hardware and software. What's happening in the hardware space, and where does software not go where people want it to go? So on the hardware front, there's a lot of new devices coming out here. A lot of new form factors in the hardware space. Whether it's new DPI monitors that are 300 DPI, whether it's new form factors, 3x4 monitors, wide aspect ratio, whether it's media center PCs, tablets, who knows what will be coming down the pipe here. But there's a lot of hardware. And one thing that you're not seeing here is on the hardware, let's talk a little bit about graphics cards. Graphics cards have this thing called a GPU. They have memory in them. And increasingly, standard PC you get is going to have at least 64 megabytes of video memory. That's probably going to waste. That technology I talked about, that engine called GDI Plus, that 90% of Windows runs through, it doesn't know what to do with that GPU. It doesn't know how to use that video card. DirectX does, GDI doesn't. And video cards are actually growing at a faster pace than even Moore's Law. So you've already got 128 meg ones out, you've got 256 ones that just came out by ATI. We'll see a 512 video card, I'm sure, within the next year, maybe 2. So we wanted to think about that. And then on the software case, we could each kind of pick examples of where we think software falls down, or where we would like to see the experience be better. One of my favorite examples here is just television. This is a screenshot of CNN. But think about how rich television is. You've got 3 video streams, you've got some you've got some transparency on top of the story, you've got animated text floating on the bottom. TV, it's pretty seductive. We watch a lot of TV in this country, and it's because it's a very, compelling experience visually. But it's a stupid device, right? TVs are just a bunch of cathode rays getting video pulse to it. Now, think about your PC. You go to CNN on the web, and you get this really flat experience, not nearly as visually compelling. And I don't mean to pick on CNN, I mean to pick on pretty much most news sites. They just are these relatively dull experiences. But this device is so powerful. It's got all this memory, it's got this processor, it's got software on it, but this is the best it can do, and we think we can do better. So in a nutshell, Avalon is the new presentation platform for Windows. It is a way to basically get pixels on the screen. And I'll speak in a little while about where it runs and when it will run. We're in pre-beta right now. And we wanted to come out here today to tell you about this new platform early, so that we could get your feedback, we could find out what you think about what we're building. Are we solving the challenges right? Are we headed in the right direction? So it's this new platform, and I just want to hit kind of 3 points for you to kind of hold on to about this platform, and then I'm going to go into a bunch of demos so that you can see this thing instead of just hearing me talk about it. The first thing to remember about Avalon is it is a new composition and rendering engine, kind of at the core of Windows. So all those things I mentioned about the hardware, this engine is going to take care of that for you. This engine is hardware accelerated. This engine is DPI neutral. This engine is aspect ratio neutral. This engine is vector based. It is not bitmapped based, so it is rendering things through vectors. This engine has a compositing and render engine. Take anything you want to put to the screen and render it together, whether that's video, 3D, 2D, animation, text, layout. All of that goes through this single rendering and compositing engine, so that you get semi-transparency, you get this engine, and it's just there for you, underneath you, right? Powering your apps. Now, on top of that, an engine isn't really any good unless it has a framework on top of it so that you can write applications. And come back to this point about Microsoft as a platform. We spent a lot of time over the years trying to write platforms that people can be successful on, trying to write frameworks that people can be efficient, productive, and write the apps they want to write. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about how do you write apps on top of this engine? How do you write tools on top of this engine? How do you work with this engine to harness its power? A couple things on this. The first thing is it's a unified framework so that you learn one framework and anything you want to do, video, animation, 2D, text, it's all the same API. You learn animation once and it flows across everything you want to do. It's based on the .NET framework. And the other thing to hold on to here is that you can write apps with Avalon using the .NET framework languages like C# and VB.NET, Visual C++.NET. But we've added a new language, if you will, called XAML, X-A-M-L, Extensible Application Markup Language. That's a code name too, it may not stick. But what it is an XML representation of that same basic language for creating Avalon applications. And we think this is a huge deal because XML is, first of all, very different than a procedural language. It's something that a larger community can get at. Markup is familiar in a way that writing code and debuggers are not. And the other thing is it's extremely toolable. Tools are very good at outputting XML. And we think there's a great opportunity for the ecosystem to write tools that maybe it's the tool they already have existing today. We even saw Photoshop, After Effects do a prototype of emitting XAML from After Effects just out of their native interface with a plugin. So, new framework. And the last thing is that Avalon is not just some isolated technology that Microsoft's thrown over the fence, in isolation from the rest of our platform strategy. It's very much part of our strategy. It's built on the .NET framework. So what does that mean? That means that anything you want to do within your app, you have this huge foundation beneath you to do it. Cryptography, regular expression engine, data access, XML engines, you name it. That whole class library is right there for you to call. On top of that, it's built on top of .NET, so it accrues all the power of .NET, the security features, the productivity features, etc. And then it's built on top of Windows. So Avalon can integrate with the shell, integrate with the desktop, integrate with the start menu. This thing is not just in isolation. And with that, let's actually take a look at this thing. So, actually, the first thing you've been watching is actually an Avalon app. This is not PowerPoint or anything else. And you saw it's a prototype. Everything you're seeing here is pre-beta, so if there's any glitches, please excuse them. But this is an Avalon app. You saw some of the kind of transitions there. That's kind of a 3D background, some opacity blending. And in fact, each of the slides is a XAML file. So here is that slide right there in XAML. Now don't get intimidated by this. It might at first look like, what is all this tags? I don't understand it. But basically here you've got a text flow with some text. And it's not just any text. This is sub-pixel clear type rendering. We've done a lot of work with fonts in the platform. So let me just change it. All right, so let's save that out. And I'm not even going to close the app. What I'm doing is this little slide viewer just dynamically renders XAML. So it takes that XAML and at runtime parses it and displays it on it. So that's your first demo. And in fact, I'm going to do some more demos just to give you a sense of how this platform looks. I'll be doing them in XAML, this markup language. Again, don't get freaked out by it. It may look foreign now. There's going to be a lot of tools to support this. But by kind of going deep to start, you'll get a sense of how this thing works, basically. So this is a grid It's got some resources that I'm going to fill in. It's got a couple buttons. These are the default buttons that ship with the default style. You can see I'll pump this up a little. I'm just doing a transform on that, so you can start to see the fidelity you get even on the zoom there. Now, I want to add some styles to this button. Styling is critical to XAML and critical to Avalon. The whole point of this platform is not to tell you what to do, but to give you the tools so that you can do what you want. So here, nothing fancy, I just did some very quick styling. This looks very much like CSS, so you've got kind of a cascading model here. Any button now is going to pick up this style. And you can cascade them in other resources as part of the app, application-wide, machine-wide, etc. Now, I want to do something more interactive here. So I'm going to add what's called a property trigger, so that when I mouse over it, it does something. Pretty typical here. I'm actually going to zoom into try to isolate this code real quick. So you've got a property trigger that says when you mouse over, change the property. Everything works on properties in Avalon. So any property can be acted on. So now, when I do this, I hover over, I get kind of this nice gradient of green when I mouse over. So this is good, but let's kind of push this a little further here. And what we'd like to do is add some animation. I said animation is a key part of the platform. And anything in Avalon can be animated. Any property can receive animation. So what I'm going to do is add a thing called a storyboard. Let's just drill into that real quick. Storyboard, very familiar concept, I'm sure you guys. We create a couple timelines, and then we fire off the timelines based on a certain event when you enter it. And that's what will initiate the timeline. And what we'll do is animate the color property on the button, and we'll animate it from blue to green over 1 second. Again, don't be intimidated by this. This is just what the markup looks like. There'll be tools to support this type of thing. But it gives you a sense of how the platform works. Now, this actually isn't going to do anything yet, because I haven't triggered those animations. This property trigger doesn't quite do what I need. So let me kill that. I'm going to put something a little more sophisticated in, called an event trigger. And now, when I hover over, I get just this nice smooth animation of color. Again, any property in Avalon can be animated. I could animate the width, I could animate the length, I could animate anything. The final thing I want to do is I said, we want to give you control. And you may say, well, I don't like this button. I don't want to use the default button. I want to override the button. But I don't want to have to re-implement all the functionality of the button and all the event handlers and what happens when I click it. And do I have to do hit testing when I click it and all of that. So what we allow you to do is say, fine, you want your own button? Take your own button. And you can do what's called override the visual tree and say, I just want to take over this tree and make it look the way I want it. So now you get kind of a much nicer button with some smooth kind of gel qualities and really let you decide the button. So let's take a look at another example to kind of keep pushing on that notion of styling. And then another really important part of Avalon called controls. So the whole model is based on controls, and the fact that any control can contain any other control, and any control should basically behave the way you expect it, no matter what you put in it. So a button should still behave like a button, no matter what you do. A list box should be a list box, no matter what you do. So in this case, I've got 4 list boxes here, and I'm binding them. Another important piece of any app is data. So we've done a lot of thinking around data binding. So we bind to this data source here. In this case, I've just got a bunch of strings, nothing too fancy. And let's take a look at what that looks like. Zoom back out. So, there you get the super zoom. What you'd expect, some list boxes, you can select them. Great. Now, what I want to do, though, is style those list boxes and change the way the list box feels, but not change its behavior. So I've got some things pre-canned up here. They're a bunch of styles. They're not too fancy, but I'm not going to go into them. And basically, I'll create a style that says, restyle this as a drop-down. So, okay, great. Drop-down list. And let me create some other styles. Again, the idea here is that A list box is a concept, right? A list box shouldn't be a visual item. It's just a concept of storing a bunch of items together. So I'm going to create a bunch of other ones here. We'll create up-down list. We'll create a radio list. And one more here. The slide list. Okay, so let's just look at these real quick, how they look. So now we've got this up-down list, we've got radio buttons, and I didn't change any code here. I just restyled these, and they preserve the behavior. All right, that's all well and good, but list boxes are boring, which is text. What can I push this a little bit? What if I want to rebind to a different data source? So in this case, I'm going to pull in some XML data. In this case, I'm just putting it inline in the file. You can imagine it coming from anywhere. And I'm saying, list box shouldn't just be a name. Let's add some images to it. And here I'm going to style what that should be like. So each item in the list box should have an image and some text, and it should bind to the data source. Now, to rebind to the source, all I need to do is point at the data source, the XML data source instead, change some syntax things with XML. Now, to completely rebound those controls, the controls themselves still have the behavior. The engine takes care of all the layout, and you control the style through control. So one more example here of kind of what this thing looks like at the low level, and then we'll go into some other demos. So I talked about documents, and I talked about 3D. And the point of Avalon is you should be able to compose any of this stuff together. You shouldn't be limited in terms of what you want to design. So what we have here is probably the simplest 3D object I could have. This is just a plane, right? It's actually not even in Z-space until I start rotating it. And what I've done is taken what's called a visual brush. And the visual brush is just any set of Avalon content. And I can compose that on top of this 3D surface. And in fact, I can change things live. So we've done a lot of work with columnization here. If I change this, that's going to reflow into one column. But if I change the column size, reflow the text into two. Let me jump up the font size here a little bit so we can see a little better what we're doing. And one great thing about this platform, I told you that this was all live. One great thing about this platform is you can learn as you go. So so that you kind of what you see is what you get. You notice I'm changing the syntax, and let me just do some live typing here so you can see it. And I basically what I get is what I see. So. I've done a lot of work with ligatures, so you notice the QI there. Once I get the U under the Q, we're going to support that. This is all open type support, etc. All right. So to start to give you a sense of the power of this platform, what it can do. Let's move on here to a different demo. You might be starting to ask yourself, well, where does this run? How do I deploy it? What's the experience like? We don't care. We love the browser, right? The browser's fantastic. HTML rocks. We love the web. So getting to an Avalon experience should be just as easy as navigating from a web page into Avalon. So in this case, I've got an Avalon application here that you can imagine navigating from a web page to this experience. There's nothing special about this version of IE. This is just vanilla IE, and we're using public APIs in IE, just like you'd host a Word document to host Avalon. But you're getting all the power of Avalon here. You're now getting, hardware acceleration. You're getting vectors, all within the browser experience. So you can completely stay in the browser. You can have iframes where you're in a mix HTML and Avalon. The browser, from a deployment perspective, deploying this should be as easy as just throwing these files up on the web page, User clicking a link, and boom, they've got an Avalon experience. What this demo actually goes through is looks at styling again. So this idea that this is a super skinnable platform. You should be able to completely reskin an application in the XAML, in the XML files, and then not have to change a line of code. So you can imagine this app where I log in or something, developer's written a bunch of login code, but from the perspective of the user, or of the designer, I just create these different skins. I completely override the button, so now it's no longer a pure rectangle, and I base it on vectors, I add some animations. This skinability and this styleability of the platform, we think opens up a lot of opportunities. Now, we love the web, but we also like Windows too. So this platform is also able to write full Windows applications. One of my favorites that we've done recently, very sexy, very exciting. I want you to hold your breath here. Avalon Notepad. This is a port of Notepad to Avalon. It does everything you would expect Avalon to do. Notepad to do. You can open files, you can, edit files. It's Notepad, right? And actually, here's the code behind it. You just ported Notepad. But the thing here, how many are familiar with Visual Studio? This is our Premiere development tool. Great. So this is Visual Studio. Within Visual Studio, what I've done is I've created this app. I didn't create it, actually. The Avalon team did. And I've got XAML files. So here's kind of the root XAML file here. And you can imagine a designer building this. Here's the menus for Notepad, etc. And then I've got the code behind it. So here's the code behind that class. And what happens is, from a technical perspective, is when you compile this application, we've got this thing called partial classes. It'll take the XAML, it'll take the code, C#, .NET, whatnot, combine them together into one binary, and there you go. So we've got this kind of interesting development model here. So this app, this platform, again, it's a platform. You can create really great looking applications. You can create standard Windows apps. You can create applications that integrate with the start menu, etc. All right, so let's look at something a little more interesting here. This is an app that we put together with the Amazon Web Services. So if you're familiar with Amazon.com, they expose pretty much anything you can get at through the web page as XML Web Services. And what we've done is just wired up a real early prototype, just playing around to see what this platform can do against these web services. So the first thing I want to point out is, I talked about we've got this integrated platform. So I want to zoom into these buttons first and give you a sense of what's going on here. These are live buttons here. And in fact, let me just zoom into this now. There we go. There you go. So this is a 3D vector image, live, composited onto the button. So when I hover over it, it's alive. And when I click the CD, it comes alive as well. So, again, is this the best UI you've ever seen? No. But if you can dream it up, you can probably do it in this platform. In fact, over here, we've got this 3D book. Now, text doesn't look really good here. What do you think? If I zoom in, when we read the text on the book, let's zoom in a little more. So there's a 3D image of a book with that 2D visual layer on top of it. Subpixel clear type on top of the button. Gratuitous, perhaps, but the point being, this platform can do it. This guy here, little rotating Xbox guy. Okay, so I said this is data bound to the Amazon Web Services, so let's actually search for something. I'm in Canada. Anybody like this band? All right, one of my favorite bands. So this is actually going out to the Amazon Web Services.
You're searching on the games.
Oh yeah, I need to be on music. I don't think Rick and Social Scene has any books yet. But they have some CDs. So what we've done is just grab that data. we can, buy these albums, put them in our shopping cart. We've got a feature here where, as I drill into the information, I get more information. Again, this is handled by the engine itself. So the engine's saying, how much room do I have on the screen to display? I don't care what my DPI rate is, I don't care what the monitor is, because the engine's going to handle that. Let me resize the content based on that. So another cool thing here, so I've got my little shop, is we can detach shopping cart from the app. In fact, let's kill the app. Now you can imagine, taking this offline, getting some nice transparency here on the desktop. Maybe dock this somewhere, go offline, because this is an offline platform as well as online. Check out, and boom, I'm back into the app. I'm ready to check out. And there you go. Now, I mentioned this whole idea of a list box should be whatever you want a list box should be. In this case, we've got a 2D list box here. That's what these each are, with some buttons and some text. But what about a 3D list box? So here's, taking those images and basically putting them in a 3D engine, navigate your experience in 3D, flip the case around, see what's there, data bind to that information, and come out. So again, the idea here is that if you want to do it, you should be able to do it in this platform. With that, I would actually like to invite up some people who we've been working with to show some prototypes of tools. So I talked about this idea that this is XAML and that we're about an ecosystem. And we see a huge opportunity here for people to build tools on top of this platform. And some folks are already doing it, and we have some folks here at Electric Brain that I'd like to bring up now to show us how you could use their tool to create 3D images and 3D meshes and bring them into Avalon. So, take it away, guys.
Pardon us, we've got a sleepy computer.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that. My name is Mike Susi with Electric Brain.
And I'm Nick Pedersen with Electric Brain as well.
So we're here to introduce you to a tool that we've been experimenting with and developing called XAM3D, kind of code name, over the last few months. And how many of you guys have heard of Electric Brain and Swift3D, our other product? Quite a few of you. So we've been around for 5 years, and the problem that we solved for you designers back 5 years ago was the ability to add 3D content to your Flash projects. And the pain that we solved was, at the time, you guys were hand tracing bitmap images frame by frame, if you recall. Quite tedious. So we developed Swift3D and allowed you to do that much faster and hopefully sped up your productivity. And quite frankly, over the last 5 years, you guys have blown us away with what you've done with our tool. It's really exciting to see. So being developers, and we develop in the C++ environment, we subscribe to Microsoft MSDN, so we kind of keep up on the latest technology. We saw that they're kind of experimenting with Avalon, or that they put out a CTP build. So about 3 or 4 months ago, we took a look at it and said, what are the capabilities that, what can this thing do? Constantly looking at new ways to retool our stuff and look for new markets. So one of the first things that we thought was appealing for both us and you to the designer is a 3D engine within. It speaks to the fact that you can render 3D on the fly rather than having to do either self-contained boxes that you can't interact 2D or anything, or pre-render that. The next appealing factor that we thought is this idea of 2D and 3D composite.
I think a great example of that is what Karsten was just showing in the Mania application, where he's literally mapping those images that are getting pulled from an Amazon database onto a 3D object that was modeled in XAM3D. So the combination of 2D and 3D in a really smooth and integrated way, I think it was a great opportunity that we saw that maybe we could capitalize on.
So the third thing that appealed to us, which we also thought would appeal to designers, is the approachability and accessibility of XAML itself. The file and the output is editable by both the designer, non-designer, and coder. So the toolability for us, when you put all three factors together, was kind of exciting. So I'm here to introduce you to XAML, and it's really, so XAML 3D, and our goal with it was to try to leverage the Avalon API in order to, and what we did is actually retool Swift 3D. We took Swift 3D and said, can we output XAML? So we took the API that Avalon and Microsoft provided, and within a couple months we were able to get functional output. And so the big question is now, where do we fit in with the ecosystem within Avalon? And I wanted to I brought up this chart. So here's a little chart that kind of describes where we fit. We're on the designer side. The designer is the one who creates the user interface and creates a rich media experience and the rich user interfaces. So we provide the XAML file and to create those rich interface elements in design.
And speaking to this ecosystem, because we've actually had a little bit of time to play around with it, I'm a product designer. I don't come from the coding background, and I work with user interface design. We found it a really valuable system and a really comfortable environment to work in, because I can build my 3D widget, I can bring it into my interface, I can integrate it into the layout, and then I can have the engineer come and fill in the code behind it and actually apply the application logic behind the scenes. So it's been a comfortable experience for us at just as we test it out.
So bringing this full circle to the demo that you just saw a few minutes ago that Karsten put together, there were some 3D controls and elements up there, the book. There's an Xbox controller. And so just to kind of lay out the workflow is you create XAML 3D in the familiar Swift 3D authoring environment, and it's a matter of exporting just a XAML file. The markup language within XAML is just leveraging the 3D classes supplied within the API. Again, something that is viewable and accessible. So the next step would be to integrate new design or development process. And then upon build, you have an executable that includes your 3D XAML file that is rendering real time with the Avalon rendering system. So at this point, it's probably worth kind of taking you through a quick tour of XAML 3D as it stands today. And this is real basic kind of, we just did this a couple months ago, and we're exploring where this application is going to go as Microsoft continues to explore and release new bits of Avalon. So we'll take a look at XAML 3D, and the first thing, we'll show this modeler, or I'm sorry, this controller. Okay, little artifact there. So this particular model is a 3ds file that you can download from the web. We happen to get this from TurboSquid and purchased it. And we can also import 2D vector artwork, AI, EPS, and you can then extrude it and so forth. Taking a quick look at the interface itself, we've got an authoring environment for simple modeling. And that would come into the form of primitives that you can quickly drop into your scene and build. They're fundamental foundational aspects of modeling that you can put together, group, animate together, and so forth. We also have an extrusion editor. This allows a familiar 2D environment that you can draw in and take it back into the scene editor, and we turn it into 3D automatically. Also the lathe editor, same type of environment, but we put a rotation on it to create the model, a little martini glass that you can go in and do some further editing within the user interface. So let's get back to the controller there for a quick second. One last tab is the advanced modeling. This is recent that we put into our regular Swift 3D product, but it allows you to go in and actually edit the mesh on a triangle level. So usually you find these tools in advanced tools, 3D Studio Max, Lightwave, and so forth. And we've added this into our product as well, so you can get into the triangle mesh level and begin to do manipulation and so forth. So let's get back to the controller itself and how we created it. We've got some pre-built galleries down here. These are our colors that you can quickly drag and drop, materials. This is pre-made lighting schemes that we have in the gallery. And this is great for quick prototyping if you're trying to throw something together real quick. And then animations as well, simple spins, deformations, splice. So we can drag that to the object itself, do a quick play sequence and see it actually, playing. The timeline, it's a little bit choppy, so we're going to extend that out to maybe 40 frames and play that over 20 frames a second. Okay. We'll just export this. Let's get back to XAML, do a file export. And again, the key here is that we don't have to render anything. And that's the one thing about Swift 3D is just the time that it takes to render. What we're doing is just writing a markup file. That's it. Describing the 3D model and object and not worrying about pre-rendering or self-contained in the box. So let's take a look at the XAML that we created behind it. And you can see that the first thing it does is start to outline the materials that were dragged onto the object. So advanced materials, the brush strokes, and so forth. So that's really simple, approachable XAML that was created. So to view this model in Avalon, we created this little Avalon player. And the test file that Nick just made, this is it actually being rendered with Avalon here. And we've got a couple of others that we pre-rendered out. That's the boat that you saw in there. Now again, what Karsten did later when we splattered the model was actually bind 2D content, and that's where you saw the text and so forth. So the 2D integration is what also, again, pretty much excited us about this. And you can also support textures. That's the one thing. We made this quick little DVD case with the XAM box. When you export the XAML, it actually creates a different JPEG or I think it's PNG file or something as the texture. So you'd load that in as a resource to your project. And we also try to push polygon models. We've created a robot here. It takes a second to load here. But, and actually the machine is, since it went to sleep, is not performing quite the way it was, of course, in practice. But so it's a little bit choppy as far as performance, where it was running a little bit later. But this is about an 80,000 polygon model. And so you can begin to see where we can push the limits here when performance is up there. So that's kind of a quick overview of how we created that XAML file real quick. And the whole idea is you don't have to write the XAML. We hopefully want to be the tool maker that will provide that for you. But it's approachable if you need to go in and make tweaks. That's a great thing. So that's about it for us. One thing I want to say is that we've got a free CTP build. We're kind of just, what we're doing is trying to sync up with Microsoft's latest bits. When we receive them, we retool the product to support the latest bits. And we have those available for free if you guys want to check this out. It's along with the March CTP bits of Avalon that we just created a DVD that has them both on it. So you can check with me if you want some, or they'll be handing them out and back. If you have any questions or information, feel free to give us a call.
And I think the one key element as a takeaway here is that we would love it if you were to come in and play with our tool, because we're literally in a pre-beta state, and we're looking for guidance from the design community. You guys have blown us away, as Mike said, with what you were able to produce with Swift 3D, and we're looking forward to seeing how you can leverage the 3D capabilities in Avalon and use our tool and basically tell us what you think it needs to be, because that's sort of the feedback we're looking for. And that's why we're here presenting with Microsoft, to try and get you guys exposed, because we're pretty excited about the opportunity.
Thanks. Thanks much.
So, of course, the demo gods have been against us here a little bit. Their machine, I wish you could see these demos when their machine was running it before. And also, you're seeing some pretty bad aliasing up there because of the projector. Again, if you look at the fidelity of these images on the laptop, that aliasing is not nearly what you're seeing on the projector. So just wanted to caveat that a little bit. So what we want to move to now is, I brought Nathan up here with me. One thing that's been kind of conspicuously absent from the demos thus far is video. And video is not in the March build, that we'll call a community technical preview that you've been seeing on the demos thus far. So everything you've seen thus far is on freely available bits. You can use them. We've got CDs, as we said. We can hand them out to you. Everything you saw runs on that. Video didn't make it into the builds yet, but we were able to get a build out of the team to show you guys what we're doing with video. And again, this is not even a stabilized build. It's basically off of developers' developer's machine. But Nathan is going to give us a quick tour of what we're doing with video. So he's just getting set up here. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say while he gets set up. Actually, no, I don't. So Nathan, take it away. I think the other thing to say, so Nathan is also the designer who designed a lot of the demos that you saw already. So if you're interested in speaking to someone with more design sensibility, and talk to Nathan afterward for sure.
All right, so first thing I wanted to show is, can you guys hear me? All right, so first thing I want to show is just how easy it is to get video into this, into anything you're creating. Karsten showed the demos before where he was just dragging and dropping the markup into the app and you can actually see it change. This is a split view. You're seeing the markup on the bottom that's actually going to get shown here. So all I'm going to do is grab this content, which is my media element. It points to this video right here. I've actually got some text that's going to render on top of that video. Then I've got another video that's going to render on top of the text on top of the video. The video is going to have an opacity of 0.8, and I'm going to rotate it a couple degrees here just to show a few features. But I'm just going to copy. Oh, I got two now. All right. Paste that in. All right, gives it a second to start up here. Like we said, this is a little bit glitchy. You're not seeing the second video. I'm just going to shut it down and start it back up really quick. Hopefully you can get started. This is, there we go, come on, get going. Second video. This is, you'll see this, hopefully you'll not see it, but this has been doing this to me in the other demo too. So, like I said, this is straight off the developers. I actually was on vacation. I was so excited about video, I came running in to try it out. It's not going to do it, so I'm not going to waste your guys' time. But what you would see here is multiple videos compositing. It's clear type text, so you got subpixel rendering. It's just awesome. So you get that open type support, so like the ligatures you were seeing before. We could see with clear type, you can put a passing on that text, all sorts of things. I want to make the point that the video I was showing there was an HD video. It's a 720 progressive video. I was handling 1080p. After that, I've been playing with this, just kind of the last playing video. So again, like I said, video came in last week, and I wanted to find out what I could do with it. So one of the first things we tried was putting video on a sphere, just to do the same thing that we were doing when we put video on the plane. Not video, the document here that was on the plane. So here's my video, and it's not like, I can resize this thing to full just to max it so you can see, the performance glitches that you guys were seeing before are not a part of Avalon. It is incredibly fast. So so that's video on ball, just to prove that I could do it, right? And I just wanted to keep trying. Let's hope this one starts up, because this is got the...
Nathan's fantastic at pushing the platform, so he'll always, can I do this? Let me see. And then take it back to the test team and say, why can't I do this?
So this is the same thing, that 720p HD source running in the background. Max it out here. Got 4 different video streams running on these spheres. The spheres, can you hold this for a second? Yeah, you got it. All right, so I have to right-click.
Yeah, so he can actually manipulate the mesh with the mouse here.
So all of the all the animation and the description of the spheres, well, it's not the sphere, but the actual model of the sphere, it's all markup. So like when I created the animations, I just went into markup and I shifted them off a little bit and set up a rotation. And it was just, I was really happy because I was like, I just want to make a little video solar system, and it was like really easy. So in here I can totally just, so gratuitous, but it's fun. So anyway, so that's video on multiple spheres. All right, and one more 3D demo. This one we had named this one Halo, because I wanted to tell people I worked on Halo. But Karsten wanted to call it Nimbus, so it wouldn't be any confusion. But basically, what you're seeing is we took just planes, we positioned them multiple times over and over and over and over again, around in a circle, and and we put our cylinder, and we put the camera inside of that cylinder. One of the cool things that I'll demonstrate in a second, but that background is another 3D model that's in the back, and I'm actually animating the planes in the back, creating that texture animation. And the slide thing that Karsten was showing before, all we do is we move the camera around, and you can have like infinite background textures. You just move the camera to a different place, and you get just a huge variety of stuff. So what you can do with this, I can click on this with my mouse, select the object, or I can use the keyboard and just start cycling through this. Oh, there we go. So just move through each one of these individually, move back. One of the things we did is we hooked up kind of like a turbo mode. If you hold down, it starts just pouring the images in. And then hold back, do the same thing. And if I find an image I like, I'll just hit enter and it selects it, moves it forward, and then I have this kind of preview mode, and I can just cycle through the images. Hold this down, and I can just suck the images down like that again. I make jokes that it looks like there's like a vacuum cleaner sucking things in there. So we have this little feature here. Now, one thing, notice that like up here in the corner here, where we've got the 2D stuff compositing over the 3D stuff again. You'll see it a little better in a second. I can change the amount of models, or change the rows. This basically rebuilds the model and shows all the content in there. I can jump this up to 7 rows. It looks like floor, you get a lot of stuff. Before I build it up here, I'm gonna actually do the color thing really quick here. So again, in the background here is this gratuitous texture animation, and I'm just going to speed that up so you can see that the sliders control the speed so that everything's cranking away. And then I can actually control the color on the fly and just kind of mix exactly what I want. What we're doing was actually using emissive materials, and it kind of is like this additive blending, so you get these really hot ramped up colors. You use emissive materials to do like low effects in 3D, things like that.
So, do you want to kick it up here? So being Nathan, he's always like, what happens if we put 10 in rows? What happens if we put 20 rows? So we played around and we decided, well, 40 looks pretty darn cool.
You have to have some patience here because
so give it a second.
It's a lot of images, but it's kind of worth the wait. Maybe grand jokes or anything.
Yeah. Well, and again, so all of this is pre-beta, alpha bits. We've been releasing these things we call CTPs, Community Technical Previews, to the community so that we can get your feedback. We're extremely active on the news groups with this project. We're extremely active in the community. Nathan blogs, I blog, many of the developers on the product blog, and we're really trying to get this thing right. So we wanted to show it to you so you can get it right.
All right. Thanks. It's a lot slower. You can see that we're duplicating images because we just programmatically added all these to it. But what I can do is I can rotate this thing, and so you can see it's 1,200 images that we pulled in here. So in each of these images, I think they're 500 by 500, 72 DPI images. So I think it's pretty cool that I can get in there and just zoom in or out on the content. There we go. Anyways, that's another toy.
Thank you. Okay, so to wrap up here, I imagine one of the first things that's in questions people might have is, where does this thing run? When does it run? What's the schedule, etc. So let's just go over that real quick. This runs on Windows XP Service Pack 2, Windows Server 2003 or higher. The higher being Longhorn, which is our next client. Hello. Our next client operating system. From a hardware perspective, our current estimates on the specs of the machine that needs to run it, 1 gigahertz minimum, at least 256 meg of RAM, and we'd like to have that hardware accelerated video card there. We will fall back to software if we don't have it, but we're gonna really take advantage of that hardware acceleration if we can get it. So now with Longhorn, this engine, the Avalon runtime, is just there by default. This is just part of Windows, and it's kind of a feature of the next operating system, if you will. But we realized that to tie it just to the operating system that's coming really scales, it's the penetration we're going to get. So we do have it running on Windows Service Pack 2, Windows XP, and that's what every demo you saw here. These were all just vanilla Windows XP boxes. The obvious issue is that you need that runtime on your machine if you're going to run it on Windows XP. You can distribute the runtime yourself. So your application can distribute the runtime. You can distribute the runtime up on your website. We're also a lot of strategies for getting this runtime out on Windows XP as well. So we expect a decent penetration coming soon. As far as availability, we'll see a beta 1 of Avalon and a beta 1 of Longhorn this summer. So Longhorn's been kind of quiet for a while, but you're going to start to hear the noise and the energy behind Longhorn build this summer. Beta 2 will be this fall, and then we'll have a final version of both Longhorn and Avalon this summer 2006. All these dates are not hard and fast dates, but this is our schedule at the current time. So with that, again, thank you so much. We're having a great time at this conference. We got a bunch of Microsoft people here. Love to talk with you more. Just get your feedback and get to know this community. We really want to reach out to you guys. Thanks a lot.